Okay, dude, this is the seventh episode.
Okay.
Now, seventh guest.
Sweet.
Really excited to get into it, man.
Yeah, I'm thankful to be here.
Yeah, no, grateful. So, just get into it
Sure.
right away. I'm curious because why don't you start off with a little bit about yourself? Because I know you, obviously, but anyone who's listening might not.
Yeah. Yeah. My name's Mason. I'm a UVic student. I'm in my third year of child and youth care.
Love it.
I have a really big passion of working with youth, and especially boys.
Mike, a little bit.
for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Is that
Sweet.
better?
That is perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, when I look around, I don't see a ton of healthy male role models. And I think that transition from boyhood to manhood is a really hard one.
Right.
And that's something I'm kind of passionate about and I want to pursue in the future.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think kind of the reason we're here today is kind of talking about my past working as a pastor.
Yeah.
So that was a crazy experience. Do you mind if I just go talk
Dude,
about some
jump
background
into
stuff?
it, man. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to.
Sweet. Yeah, so on the religion side, my family was Christian.
Ever since birth.
Yeah, on my mom's side, my grandpa was a pastor. My dad's side, they helped start a big church here.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of Christian influence
Right.
in the family. But I never felt that way. I kind of felt like I was dragged to church by my parents, and it was never something that I really wanted to do myself.
Right.
I felt kind of just forced into it, which isn't entirely true. But then my church, Gateway,
Yeah.
must have been 2015 or 16, they hired a new youth pastor. And I remember seeing a picture of him and being like, I'm not going with this guy. I was 15, 16. I was
Yeah.
like, he's a redhead.
Right.
I don't know why that was a big thing for me.
Is this the current pastor?
No.
Okay.
No.
You moved on. Okay.
No. I just saw this picture of him. I'm like, I'm not going to this guy's youth group. But my parents, they asked me to go, and their asking kind of turned into telling me to go.
Right.
And I did, and I genuinely had a good time.
Wow. Okay.
So fast forward a couple years, and summer camp is things that kind of every kid does, and this guy Eric was like, "Hey, let's take the youth group to this summer camp."
Okay.
So I entered this week-long summer camp, kind of feeling like a kid who grew up in a Christian house, but didn't feel like a Christian.
Right.
I hadn't made the decision myself really.
Right.
And as the week went on, my heart kind of opened up to the idea.
Okay.
It was a really cool experience. I had put up this guard where everything sucked. I didn't get enough sleep.
Right.
The showers sucked. I started powerlifting at that time. There wasn't enough protein. I wasn't getting enough calories. I found every reason to be upset with it.
Was this in high school?
Yeah, this was, I want to say 2017.
2017. Okay. So grade 10, 11?
11. Yeah, grade 11.
Around there. Okay.
Yeah. So I found every reason just to be upset.
Yeah.
With it. And one thing that the camp did is they had chapel, which is like a mini church service.
Right. Okay.
So they have one after breakfast, and then they have one after dinner. And it was the Thursday night. So we had a bunch of these chapel sessions. And the Thursday night, I remember really listening.
Okay.
And I don't remember what I listened to be honest.
Right.
But I remember the guy who was talking. His name was Storm. He was this 6'5", 275-pound ex African American football player. He had a stage presence.
Yeah.
He was a big guy, and I just remember this feeling I have to go talk to him.
Right.
But there was this little voice in the back of my head that was like, you don't have to talk to him.
Yeah.
But then I stood up, and I want to be careful saying this. I always feel a little bit weird saying this. But I was kind of pulled towards him.
Okay.
And the only way I can explain it is from Star Wars Episode 4. When Princess Leia's ship is sucked into Darth Vader's.
Okay.
It felt like a tractor beam was pulling me.
Okay.
It was such a weird experience.
Right.
And I go and just say, hey, Storm, I need to become a Christian.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he preached on. I don't know what he prayed over me.
Right.
But in that moment, I became a Christian for myself.
Wow.
And I took my first breath, and it literally felt like an anvil came off my chest.
Yeah.
This weight of just all this crap I've been carrying with me.
That's amazing.
And that's kind of the journey. So that started in 2017, and there's been a lot of little things that have gotten me to sit here on this couch with you, but that's kind of the origin story.
That's the origin story. That's awesome. And Storm, he was African American. Oh man, I did some video work when I had my video company for this guy named Storm.
Okay.
Tall African American guy. I wanted to take out my phone and show you a picture. Maybe I'll wait till afterwards. If one of us remembers, we'll see. But that's really cool if that happens to be the same guy. That's wicked. But if not, that's amazing.
It is.
Yeah. So Dude, man, I felt the exact same way when like it feels like almost like you have these dots in your mind, especially because I grew up Christian family as well, Christian slash Catholic,
Okay.
and you know you go through it and it's like you hear it. I felt like I was getting dragged to church and everything, and then eventually like I kind of renounced it. It was like not for me.
Yeah.
But I feel like you have those dots planted in your mind, and that takes like someone really, really eloquent and articulate with the word to actually like put those dots together and like help you form that. Is that what you found as well?
Yeah. It was that, and it was also like a spiritual moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a spiritual awakening, but kind of later in that journey, the guy I mentioned earlier, Eric, he was super important to me.
Right.
He became my friend, my mentor. I worked for him. Like, I saw him like 3-4 times a week.
Yeah. Wow.
And he was someone that really also helped me kind of stick with it and kind of articulate why I believed what I believed.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's it's a crazy experience, I think, just religion, because in the sense that when I first had it and I renounced it, it was just you try and stay as far away from it as possible, right? And I remember grade high school at all, I wanted nothing to do with the church at all, right? It seemed like a bunch of like wishy-washy stuff, and then you know eventually it's like life went on. I started believing more in the sense that there's some force pulling it more on like the spiritual side. You know, there's like Eastern religion, there's Buddhist philosophy, there's something out there that's pulling it towards me. And it took, when you listen to the podcast with Micah, all these little tiny steps that kind of drew me towards him, and all these like weird things that you wouldn't expect to happen, just like you were saying, like you felt like this pull towards him. It's just it's so random how that happens. But yeah, man, that's crazy. So what inspired you to start preaching, to start becoming a pastor?
Yeah. So it was like a constellation of little decisions. So
right.
I've been at my current church for like 13 years, so I've kind of grown up.
And I've seen me
go from like a kid who didn't care about youth group to working as a pastor. Right?
Yeah.
And there's just little opportunities. Like they asked me, "Hey, you want to come work as like a summer intern?"
Right.
So you hang out with kids, you do youth group, all this sort of stuff. You get paid to do it. Like, cool, I like that. I did that 3 or 4 times, and then the current youth pastor, she had a baby, and she's like, I can't do my job and have a baby. Like I need some time off, and she asked me to step in, kind of fill the void while she was gone.
Right.
So that was like almost a year, 9 month to a year commitment.
Yeah.
And it wasn't super unfamiliar to me, but it definitely like stretched my capacity for sure.
Right. Okay. Did you take that internship? Like, were you playing like the leadership roles before you did that, or did you just go straight in and like, I'll become a pastor, and then just went right for it?
Yeah. It was never super planned out.
No, okay.
So I interned with the church like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And then since high school, I've taken like a Bible college class in the summertime.
Oh,
so I have some like formal education.
Yeah.
But I'm not like an ordained pastor or anything.
Right.
Which was kind of fine for the role I was doing. Obviously, if I'm gonna like do that as a career, you're gonna need to go to school and get some understanding. But I mean, the team at the church where I work, like our lead pastor has like 2 master's degrees in like Bible and theology. Like he's a really smart guy.
Yeah, this is like the main pastor. See, I listen to him speak and I am like entranced. Like he is one of the best pastors I think I've ever listened to. I've even like copied a few of the things he says when I'm like teaching my spin class or everything. Sure. I remember exactly this one moment he was like, or just every time he says something, it's like, yeah, it's probably not you guys, but me. And I listened to it, I was like, wow, I love that. Yeah. And that even now when I'm teaching like spin class or something, I'm like, yeah, I know you guys probably aren't tired, but you know, I am. And that type of thing. It's just, there's some psychological thing that's going on there that just makes it so like inviting and so fun to listen to. Cause you know, it's like, yeah, that includes me too, but it's so nice that he said that. Yeah. Right. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I really look up to Aaron. He's like another big reason why I'm sitting here on this couch today. Yeah.
So I'm actually really curious. What was that Bible college class like? Because I took, I went to a Christian school from like K till 9. Okay. And, we had Bible class and everything. It's like, get your Bible, highlight a few passages and everything. Like I'm probably like recite stories to you, but I never internalized them. Yeah. So what was that class like for you?
Yeah. So I think I've taken a handful, like 5 or 8 classes.
Okay.
It's ranging everything from like New Testament, Old Testament, systematic theology, I think church history. Mm-hmm. I did them online by myself, which kind of sucks.
Right.
I'm very extroverted, and I like to learn with people.
Of course.
So sitting home after work in the summertime, working on Bible college is not the most fun thing for me.
Dude, no.
Of course. For sure not. But just the way my life was kind of situated at the time, there wasn't a real opportunity to kind of go away for a long period of time to do that sort of school.
Right.
So it's kind of like what I had the option to do. Not a huge fan of learning by myself. That was just me.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, like the knowledge that I did gain was super important.
What was some of the knowledge? Like what they, because I'm really curious, right? Like when you say like you went over New Testament, Old Testament, how do they go about teaching that in a way that's not like a history lesson, basically? Because that's what I felt like Bible class was for me.
No, absolutely, and it did feel like that sometimes.
Oh, it does.
I'll be
Okay.
the first one to admit that. Like when we're talking about like the New Testament or the Gospels, it's kind of working through each of the Gospels and looking, what is Jesus saying here? Can we make ties to the Old Testament? Can we make ties to other parts of Scripture? Why is he saying what he's saying? Yeah. We have to be careful, like, not to put our interpretation on it, but instead pull an interpretation out of it, right? Because there's a saying from Aaron. A text without a context is a pretext to say whatever you want. Okay, whoa, one sec. A text without a context. A text without a context is a pretext for saying whatever you want. Yeah. Could you explain that a little bit for me? Yeah. You can pick like any book, and you could find a passage, not even a book of the Bible, like any like novel. Right. And find a sentence, a paragraph, and that could be like your mission statement. But if you don't know the text surrounding it, you could use it to say whatever you want. Right. And you see that all the time with everything nowadays, right? Just pulling something out of context. Sure. The one I always hear people pick on is there's a passage in the Old Testament where it says that as a Christian you shouldn't wear a garment of two different types of cloth. Oh, okay. Like you shouldn't wear like wool and linen together. Okay. That was like Old Testament laws that are kind of fulfilled with Jesus and don't really apply to us today. But you can find that if you don't have like a greater context. You're like, oh, well, look, you're not a real Christian because you're wearing like your jeans are stretchy. Like there's spandex in there. You can't. Right. You're sinning. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's tons of things like that too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially in religion. Man, that's really interesting. Yeah. I'm thinking back to all of those, like, I can't pull anything out of my head right now, but there's just like tons of things. And I'm curious because I think what helped me a lot with the Bible is that, same thing I mentioned before, is I saw it like this book of history. It's this like book of fact. This is what happened from the beginning of time to before Christ, after death, and then till Revelations. But this is exactly what happens. And I think what Mike really helped me see the Bible was as a book of interpretations, a book of stories, a book of metaphors of things that might not have happened but have huge lessons combined to them. And that helped me a lot. But what do you think of that logic when you look at the Bible? I mean, the Bible, I don't remember where I picked this up, but the Bible's really a library. Yeah. Right? So it's 66 books. Right. And it's everything from history to poetry to personal letters. Yeah. I think if you try to read everything the same way, it's not going to make sense. Yeah. There's like a book in the Bible called The Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, which is like a love poetry. Yeah. And if you read that like history, it's not going to make sense. Right. The same thing if you read like a personal letter, like, I don't know, Colossians, which is like Paul writing to the church in Colossus, or Colossae, I think. It's not going to make a lot of sense if you're not reading it in like a letter format. Yeah. Sorry, I totally blanked on your question. No, that's okay. I'm curious on your thoughts of like looking at the Bible as like a book of like metaphors and something to be interpreted and not like history itself. For sure. Yeah, there's arguments like a big one is creation. Like 7 days, is it 7 literal days? Yes, right. Is it 7 million years? Like what is it? Yeah. And I would tend to lean towards 7 days. Okay. But I'm also not opposed to saying 700 years because in my limited time on Earth, I haven't found a being powerful enough to create matter out of thin air, whether it takes 7 days or 7 million years. Right. Like we're not out here like creating matter out of nothing. Yeah, right. So even if it did take God 700 years or 7 million years, I don't think it really matters for my belief in that story at least. Completely. Yeah. Does that make sense? No, I agree. So, and
I'm curious, and if we ever go, because I'm gonna try and pick your brain here. So if there's
Please.
anything I ever say, just let me know. Like, hey, maybe I don't want to talk about that. We'll just
Okay.
cut it out. But
Yeah, no, no.
I think what helped me when I was like reading the Bible and trying to understand that is I the idea of like maybe even something like creation.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something that almost like didn't happen, or in the sense that like something like the Big Bang and creation could have happened simultaneously.
Yeah.
In the sense like the Big Bang could have been a physical materialization of this creation sense, and when we look back in time we're saying like, yeah, it's the Big Bang, this is proof that God doesn't exist. You could be like, no, that happened because God existed, right? And those things can happen in tandem.
Yeah.
Does that fall in line with like Christian belief, or is that something like this happened exactly the way the Bible said? And
yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, I wouldn't say a guessing game, but it's not like an instruction handbook per se.
Right.
It's not like you get a new dishwasher and like step by step.
Yeah.
In terms of the Big Bang, I don't know if this isn't really common knowledge, but the Big Bang was actually first theorized by a Christian.
Really?
Yeah, and it was his way of explaining like, if in Genesis like everything just happens, like a snap of a finger, what are we going to call that? And he called that the Big Bang.
Right.
So to me, like, I don't have a problem with the Big Bang because I can rationalize it and make sense of it. And be like,
right.
Maybe it is just God snapping his fingers.
Yeah.
And light appeared.
Right.
And matter appeared. And, like the water separating from the land and birds in the sea.
Yeah. No, completely. And even when you think about things like concepts of like evolution,
sure.
and that sense, because all of like these are things usually, at least when I was studying the Bible in like grade school and everything, so maybe my knowledge now is a little like iffy, but these are things where I'm like, oh, okay, well, if evolution happened, then that means God didn't exist, so evolution must not have happened. And like now my understanding is now like, hey, maybe like evolution was part of that like 7 million year theory, which like just took that amount of time.
I'm not super well versed in evolution, but
again, no, me neither.
I don't have a huge problem with like microevolution, like adapting to your environment.
Yeah,
it's the same thing as the gym, right? If I walk into the gym never being there, and then like 3 years later I'm like big and strong, it's because I've adapted to my environment.
Yes, of course.
I have a harder time believing like we came from monkeys, but
really, okay,
it's not something I've put a huge amount of thought into.
Yeah, of course. Well, me neither. And honestly, I'm in a bio class right now. To lectures, so maybe if I have been, I would be able to talk more about this.
There's some answers to that.
Yeah, but it seems like there's just a lot of examples where kind of like science and religion just clash in a way, and like atheists use a lot of like science to disprove religion, when now at least I have like the perspective where I can see them just working in tandem. Like it was like this happened because of the spiritual force that we call God, like guiding it all to happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just, curious on your perspective on that.
Yeah. There's like a field of like in Christianity called apologetics, which is like the defense of your faith.
Okay.
I'm not super big on that. I was always like pretty focused in the church. Like I'm going to teach people who are already here.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, like I don't have a huge problem if there's differences between Christianity and science. I think in a lot of places they do kind of line up.
Yeah.
And in other places they don't. I'm sure there's an explanation. Again, not the most well-versed person.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. What are your takes on like other religions, in the sense that, and I'm trying to phrase these questions in the sense that I'm like really curious to ask you, but I don't also want to be like offensive, not to you, but to like, other things. And I guess I'm just gonna try and start this by saying my views first, and then you can let me know what you think, so I'm the one who ends up saying something offensive, and that's how it goes. But I think what also helped me define my belief in my religion is this understanding of all religions kind of leading to the same thing. In that sense, like what really helps me is really understanding like Eastern religion and like Taoism and Buddhism, all that sense. And when I was learning Christianity, I always thought of it, and I had people around me where it's like, it's religion versus religion. You have the Christians versus the Catholics versus the agnostics versus the, the Buddhists versus the Muslims and everything. When now it's like, for me, there's God, right? And I think all of these different beliefs all just lead up to the same God. I don't like the sense that we can be in church in Gateway worshiping this, powerful force in their life. And it's this powerful experience. You feel it when you're worshiping, and then in a place like on the other side of the world in India, they can build these like these fanatic, fantastic temples and everything for like a different god, right? Like for me, I see that it all has to be towards the same thing, and that's kind of the take I have now.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on that? Do you kind of share that same view, or is it?
I think I'd first start by saying, and I had a conversation with a classmate this week.
Yeah.
Like, I am a huge proponent of like searching, right? Yeah. Like if you grew up in a Christian church, like look around. Of course. I'm not encouraging you to like abandon your faith completely and like go on this spiritual quest for like 10 years, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in a Baptist church.
Okay.
I've been to like an Eastern Orthodox church. I've been to Catholic Mass. I've read the Quran. Like I've tried to expose myself to other facets to have a better understanding.
Right.
For when I come and have a conversation with you or talk to a kid, like, no, I believe this because I've actually done some searching. I'm not just sitting here blindly in a pew. I think kind of about your view, like all religions lead to God. Christianity has always been offensive. For 2,000 years, it's kind of stood in opposition to what the world says.
Right.
So I just preface that by saying, like, the Bible is pretty clear that there is one way to heaven, and that's through Jesus.
Yeah.
That's my take. That's my belief.
Right.
And I'm not gonna walk around like forcing people to believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
My understanding of Scripture is that it is through Jesus Christ that you get to eternal life.
Yeah. Right.
And in no way condemning any view of anyone else. Like if you have a whole other view, like that is totally cool.
Right.
Like you've done some searching and you've gotten to a place where you feel like that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
More power to you.
Yeah. That's interesting. What are your thoughts on like afterlife? When you say, and then let me know, because then again,
no, all
good. But like when you say like heaven or hell, do you believe like that's something after death, or do you believe that's more of, because there's this scripture I want to say paragraph, not verse, that's the word I'm looking for, verse that Micah told me that I love, and it's like once you believe in God, it's like bringing heaven onto earth.
Sure.
Right? And like life with God is heaven, just on earth. Like our experience is heaven, and that's the viewpoint I kind of like took, is like living with God is like living with this plan that is already made for you. I made this video where like God sowed this seed, and I'm just reaping the rewards, because like everything that I've done is God's plan for me, and I know the plan, I'm trying to see that through. Sure. And anything I experience with this is heaven.
Sure.
And that's a take that I kind of using right now. Obviously that might change as we grow and everything. Yeah. But what are your thoughts? Do you believe in that sense, or do you believe more in heaven as after death?
Yeah. I think I'd actually believe in both.
In both.
Be so bold as to state that. I think a lot of times Christians like believe, okay, I've been saved, I'm a Christian, I'm not going to hell.
Right.
And then kind of just wait till death.
Yeah.
But I think we do get to experience pieces of heaven here on earth.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're living, just kind of waiting for that end date, you're not really living life well.
Right.
You shouldn't be experiencing life. We've been put on this amazing planet. We live in an amazing city. Like, why not experience what God's given you right now?
Of course.
And then I also do believe in like a heaven and hell. I think hell is a little bit more confusing.
Okay.
Because in parts of the Bible we hear things like hell is represented through like the gnashing of teeth and darkness. Yeah. But it's also represented through eternal fire. Right. So how do you have darkness and fire?
Right.
So is it a physical place? Is it real? Is it like, what is it?
Right. Yeah.
People smarter than me have said that hell is just the absence of God.
Yeah.
And then heaven is being like in relationship with God.
Right.
I don't have a super good understanding of either concept.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because as humans, we have finite minds, and we're trying to understand an infinite God.
Yes.
And I don't want to like sit here and just dodge every question. Like I'm not.
No, that's okay.
I'm not going to know everything.
You just
and
don't know.
I don't think anyone truly will. Like it's any sort of concept. It's going to be pretty hard to think of something infinitely with the minds we've been given.
Yeah.
The example I always think of is like your laptop is not going to know you fully.
Right.
It knows parts of you. It's going to know your email, like your iCloud, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fully know Jordan.
Right.
And that's the same thing. Like we can know parts of God.
Yeah.
But we're not going to know him fully as like a being created by him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, dude, I love that. That's the words, but that's something that helped me a lot, was this idea of like putting God in a box, right? And it's like God is, yeah, I did, and like God is like this in this box, you know, old man with a beard, you know, in the sky, floating on a cloud, and everything. It's like, oh, that's God. That's my finite understanding of him. I can't understand all of these different binary, infinite numbers, everything that's happening. So this is the image that I put to him, and that's that. But when in reality, it's like this, you'll never be able to understand it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and there's even parts like I don't understand now. Like,
of course,
there's so many complexities and intricacies that always make me want to like search for more.
Yeah,
I think it is really like a journey that you start and you don't really end until you're dead.
Right.
I think if you like become a Christian, like, okay, I got like the core tenets down. That's cool. I'm just gonna sit and relax until like my time's up.
Right.
And I think that's the same with life. Like in any facet, whether like in a religious sense or academic or even just personally, like I always want to be learning. I always want to be growing and developing more as a person.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be. Right? Like the moment, like, you know, the moment you stop growing, you're declining. You're not improving. Life keeps going. Exactly. Right? It doesn't stop. So if you're not moving along with it, you're gonna get past. Yeah, I want to kind of go back into something you said at the very start, which I'm like very interested in, and I love this topic. And you mentioned you're a big advocate for like helping boys, you know, make that transition into men and like into that masculinity sense. And could you go a little bit more into that? Like when you say that, like what do you mean by that?
Exactly. Yeah. So part of my roles working as a pastor was running our youth group on a Wednesday night.
Right.
And part of that is like a big teach, so it's like preaching on a Sunday basically, but to a group of like 40 kids. And then from there we go to something called small groups, and I was the high school boys leader.
Right.
And the reason I'm in school for child and youth care, the reason that I decided to take on that role as a pastor is because there were men in my life that helped me transition from a boy to a man.
Right.
And I wouldn't be here today without them.
Right.
I can think of like 5 or 10 guys, maybe not 10, 5 or 8 guys that were super influential in my life.
Yeah. And
I've taken traits and characteristics and qualities of them and incorporated into who I am today.
What do you mean by that when you say like boy into man? Like what are some of those traits that you know, defines, like, or not defines, that's a harsh word, but like that you found in your personal journey helped you from being like the boy into the man that you are now? Yeah.
That is a question I'm still working through.
Of course.
And literally with my high school boys. Like every Wednesday, we're supposed to have like these small group questions, and we always just talk about like, what does it mean to be a man? Like, how do you get to manhood? I think one thing is voluntarily accepting responsibility. Right. That's a big one. I think physical fitness is another huge part.
Yeah, of course.
And I think there's always like a bit of a spectrum though. Like you can have a guy who doesn't go to the gym who you know is a man for sure.
Yeah, of course.
And you can also have a guy who goes to the gym who's built and big and he's like a kid. Yeah. I think responsibility, I think physical fitness is important. I think trying to strive to be someone who is respected by others. Right. I think a lot of people our age are like, oh, I don't care what other people think. Yeah. But I think in some respects, you want to grow into a man who other people respect.
Of course. I mean, we thrive off of, you know, the validation from others, right? Like that's, as much as you want to say like, you know, like I'm the lone wolf, you know, I don't really care what other people think, you do. Yeah. Right. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like you want to be the best person that you can be in order to help the people around you be the best person you can be. Exactly. Yeah. It's a hard topic nowadays, right? I think it's a journey that I personally don't think is happening for a large majority of kids nowadays. I wish I knew why. You know, I don't. You know, you can name a bunch of things that's happening in the world right now, but it's difficult. And what made you like really interested in helping other boys go through that? Yeah.
Like a big part was just having those guys around me. Yeah. But then I also looked around and was like, who's a good role model? Right. Like I think you and Micah talked a little bit about like Andrew Tate. Yeah, of course. I don't think he's the best role model. I think there's like nuggets of knowledge there. Mm-hmm. But would I say like, oh, you should definitely live up to be this guy? Probably not. No. Yeah. But then you look around, like the average portrayal of like a father in the media, it's like Homer Simpson, like a dumb dad who is belittled by his wife and kids, or like Peter Griffin.
Yeah.
Or like the idea of a father or a man is not super prevalent anymore.
It's not, yeah.
And I think that's kind of problematic, because then we see the effects of that in other places in life, right? We see men not knowing how to like treat themselves or treat women. Then you have like Me Too movement things, or like on campus, like all those like sexual assault posters, which is a real problem. I think part of that is because men are not taught how to be good men.
No, completely.
And like, how do you realistically do that?
Yeah.
It's not a class like how to be a man or how to be a woman, or how to be a good man or how to be a good woman.
Yeah.
Right? I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole process and what exactly I want to do with this passion. Do
that, bro. I struggle with that like every day, right? You know, it's like masculinity it's always like a changing topic, at least in my life. Like, and I'll be honest, like maybe even like 6, 7, 8 months ago, like recently, like I was very in the sense that like masculinity is this idea of fast cars, you know, having a lot of money. If I want to be the man, you know, I have to, you know, be able to have, you know, a lot of women around me. I have to be, you know, be able to make a lot of money, which I think being able to provide is a very masculine trait. But then you start crossing past that threshold, that kind of leads into a little bit of like a hedonism lifestyle, and I was associating that with masculinity, which it's just it's not. And I think there's a lot of media that portrays it's either this or that. You're either, you know, the Tates and you go down that path, or you go down the blue pill and you go down like the Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin path, when like the real sense is straight down the middle.
There's definitely a middle ground to that, for sure. You don't have to be like a toxic guy driving your Bugatti around.
I think it's such a hard fine line to pass. I think not you, I think a lot of us, like a lot of guys especially, are constantly struggling with that. One of my the last podcast I had with was my friend Alex, and he's 25, 26, and what I love about talking to people who are just a little bit older is just those few more years of life. You learn so much in every year that you have. And he told me a little bit about, you know, his journey, and you know what he went through, and like in therapy, and talking about, you know, what does it mean to be a man, going through these same stages, and the young 20-year-olds of life, and we all go through it, right? It's just really tough.
It is.
Do you find that a lot of the kids that you're helping in your group are going through that as well? Like they're
like trying to figure out what
it means to be a man.
There's two guys, but they like, I think they're 16 now, and their definition of manhood right now is like the gym. All they do is lift. And they're big. Like this one kid's like 16. He's built. He's like 170 pounds or something.
Dude,
like
he's sick.
He's pushing some weight. But I think there's obviously more aspects of that. But yeah, like they are kind of struggling to figure out what that means.
Right.
And I think it's challenging too when a lot of kids like grow up without a dad. They don't even grow up with a like either no dad or like a kind of an absent father. It's gonna be really hard to figure out what that looks like. It's not an easy thing. I'm so grateful I grew up with a dad.
Very.
And like it's. I remember when I was in school a couple of years ago, I mentioned like, oh, like both my parents are together, and some guy was like, oh, you lucky, you just swore or something. Like,
you're right.
Like, I can't believe you have both parents. I was like, it's like a real blessing. It's a real privilege to have.
Genuinely.
To have those parents.
Genuinely. What you found like your, like what like lessons, or even just like what did you take from your dad that you found like was helped you like transition that you know barrier from like boy to man?
For sure. One thing I really learned from my dad is hard work.
Right.
Our family owns a small business here in the city.
Yeah, the flower shop, right? Your mom was telling me about it.
And I mean, if my parents don't work, there's no money being brought home. And you know, like here I have a couple more weeks of school, and then it's almost like Christmas time, and it's not unusual for me to work like 20 days straight in December.
Like, really?
We usually like work up until like Christmas Eve, like 3-4 o'clock. Because again, like if we don't do the work, who's going to do it?
Right.
So I think hard work is a big one, because I think a lot of people neglect that or like delegate it to other people.
Yeah, of course.
I think there is like a huge merit in hard work, and I know there's like benefits in things like ChatGPT. Like I'm sure we've all used it a little bit for schoolwork.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's also some amazing character building that happens when you have to go through hard work.
Yeah, no, there is completely.
It's like you can't buy a good body.
You can't. Yeah.
You have to put in the hard work. You have to be in the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week. You have to eat clean. You can't buy that. I think the same thing is like good, strong character. You can't buy good character.
You can't. No, completely. And it's the same thing, man. And I'm gonna say some things here, and Dad, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but when I was struggling with masculinity for myself, and I was seeing masculinity as being as big as you can be, as like rich as you can be, I was looking at like my dad, and I was like, oh man, like my dad isn't shredded, right? Like, oh, like, that he's not a man, like that he didn't fit into my definition of what it means to be super masculine. And as I grew up and really tried to understand more about masculinity from my point of view, and like what I wanted to be as a man, I started seeing and understanding the fact that my dad was just always moving. He was always working. There's no chill time for him, right? He works home. He's an engineer, and he's working on some really incredible stuff. And he does that from like 9 to 6 a.m. and he gets home, and then he's like, he's replacing the tires on my car. He's like saying like, hey Jordan, your car needs an oil change. And this is back when I was like a kid, when I was in school. It's like, yeah, I'll get to it, back onto the video game, back onto the console. And then I'm up 2 hours later, I go into the garage and there's my dad, working on it. And then after that, there he is in the kitchen helping my mom. And I never really understood all that stuff that was happening in the background. It didn't fit what my definition was of masculinity. But just the idea of that hard work that, as like kids, as boys, we really just push away all the time. It's like, if I don't do it, someone else will.
Sure.
There has to be that person who always will if you don't. And I think that really helped me with my definition of, what it means to be masculine. I'm just so grateful to have that as well. Yeah.
Can I share something?
Please.
Yeah, it just came to mind as you were talking. There's a couple like examples of good masculinity in the Bible, and there's one, Ephesians 5, where 5:25, I believe. Oh, here we go. So there's parts of the Bible that gives like instructions on, or just instructions, and this section is kind of talks about like husbands and wives, and it says, where are we? Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. I think if you just read that, it might not really make sense, but you have to look at kind of like what Jesus did. Right. If we believe, or if I believe in like a God that died for my sins, that's the call like a man to his wife and family. You're supposed to give yourself up even to the detriment of those around you. Or like if it's a detriment to you, you still give yourself up to others. And I saw that when you were talking about your dad. Like, I'm playing video games and he's doing the oil change. Like, he's tired. He's worked from, what do you say, 9 in the morning to 6 p.m.? And then he's coming home, he's putting on new tires, he's doing the oil change. Like, he's tired. He wants to sit on the couch, drink a beer.
Yeah, of course.
But he cares about his family. And I think that's right there is a really good picture of what manhood looks like, what masculinity looks like.
Dude, I completely agree. And man, when I was like trying to figure this out, like that was like the best example of masculinity. Like Jesus, man, if you're looking for the perfect example of masculinity and you're trying to find, these figures, and you're going online and you're seeing guys like, obviously Tate's the first one that pops up just because it was so popular and polarizing at the time. But, there's great role models like Jordan Peterson, if you ever seen him, and a bunch of other like nuggets of information you can take from other people. Obviously, lots of critical thinking involved when you're trying to find people online, right? But then when you go into the Bible, like here's this example of someone who's just all loving, all caring, and it's just something that we should strive to be. At least that I'm trying to strive to be.
It's a hard one, man. It's because you're like an imperfect, sinful person. How are you going to live up to this super high standard? But I think as you like walk through life, you go through this journey, you go through like sanctification, becoming more holy. You kind of live into that character a little bit more as time goes on. We try, right? That's the thing. Like, we're just constantly, try our best, trip up, fall on our face a few times, and it's just being able to get back up. Oh my goodness. But I think that's really important as well. It's like those seasons or years of hardship.
Yeah.
They make you who you are today.
They do.
I've had a well, 3 or 4 months ago I would have said this was the worst year of my life.
Really? Okay.
I think today I would say this has been the most challenging year of my life.
Okay.
And there's just been so many ups and downs, like working at the church, relationship stuff, starting school, like you name it. There's been ups and downs this year. Right. And I think they've really changed me who I am.
Yeah.
I've had some friends be like, "You are not the same man you were in January to now in November."
Yeah.
Like you've changed significantly.
Right.
And I think it's when we don't shy away from those hardships.
Yeah.
When we confront life head on.
I completely agree.
You grow, right?
You grow.
You mess up. I think, to me, I'm someone who likes to confront the problem fast.
Yeah.
Okay, I've messed up. How do I right the ship? How do I fix things? Yes, I'm going to take a hit on like character points. Yeah, people might look down on me for a little bit, but the right thing to do is confront this head on.
Yeah.
I think that's super key.
Yeah, I mean that's the only way you grow, right? Yeah. Is that, you have to fall back a little bit to get back up and like run a little farther.
Yeah.
Right? That's just, it's, I think one of the worst things you can hear is like, yeah, dude, you're the exact same as you were like a year ago.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right? Like that'd be horrible.
Exactly.
Because like growth is what makes us as a person. And I struggle with this a lot because sometimes I think about like, what if I never had these experiences that made me who I am, all these like hardships, all these, every time I fell on my face, just to put it into that sense, is I wouldn't learn. But I think it's only afterwards that you can kind of look back and just be so grateful. Yeah. For all of that. At the time, it sucks.
No, it does. Yeah.
Right.
You go through some real pain, but it makes you who you are today.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Dude, what was do you mind going into like what made this year really hard for you? What made it really difficult?
I mean, yeah, like working at the church really stretched me.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like going from a normal like Sunday kind of just sitting around, like sitting in service, listening, like doing your worship.
Yeah.
But it's different when you're on the other side of it.
Right.
It's like having to get up and talk. It was just like announcements, but for me, I like get so dialed into that, it's hard for me to like be engaged in the service.
Right.
And then every week, more or less, I'm writing like a 15-20 minute speech to 40 kids. I'm coming up with questions. There's games, all that stuff. So that was like a lot of good stress, and that really pressured me into some growth.
Of course. I kind of feel like there's a little bit of like a societal pressure nowadays to, and maybe as like a member of a church, it's a little bit different, but there's a lot to engage in a more like hedonistic sense of relationships, right? There's a societal pressure to kind of, casually explore, and there's a lot of benefits for that, right? Lots of like, growth and experience different partners and everything. But that's something I've been trying to like find the balance between, is like understanding that, I'm not the person I want to be to have this amazing relationship that I want to have. So do I go down this path of what's traditional at this moment and, explore and have casual relationships, or do I continue to just work on myself and try to become that person that I want to be in order to have an amazing relationship in the future?
Yeah.
Is that what you're...
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, where do you draw the line? Like, what are you looking for? I feel like I'm a bit of an old soul.
Yeah.
Like I'm only 24. I feel like it's still relatively young enough.
Right.
24, 25, you're kind of like, you're an old young person, right? Like.
Yeah. I think anyone who's like 30, 40, 50 will definitely disagree.
I mean, it feels like that. You're on campus and there's like all these first years. And
like, yeah, of course.
It was crazy. I'm like, I'm an old man. But yeah, I'm kind of at a place in my life where I'm looking both like short term and longer term.
Right. Okay.
I think I'm at a place though where I'm looking relationship wise. I'm looking more long term.
Right.
Like it to be a long term relationship or like a wife sort of situation.
Of course.
I'm not really wanting to date around too much.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to date to get married. You can't just like.
You're the one.
You're the one. There's obviously a dating part to that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm right now in my life. I'm not super interested just like going out to clubs and like picking up girls and all that sort of stuff. I'm not saying that's what you are, but I'm saying like as the culture kind of like promotes that a lot of the time.
Yeah,
that's
which is what I'm saying
right now.
Yeah. Did that used to be like? Did you find that you kind of fell into that before in the past, or?
Not really. Like,
No,
I mean, everyone's gone downtown, had a few too many drinks, tried to pick up a girl or something.
as it goes, yeah.
Yeah, and I think again that's a thing you have to learn, like rejection. Like,
Yeah.
It takes some balls going up to a girl and be like, hey, I think you're attractive. Can I get your number? Or can I
Yeah.
buy you a drink?
Yeah.
And then hearing no, and you're like, oh, okay, good thing I have my boys with me.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I never really got into like clubbing. Or
Not into
like
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. But yeah, dude, just going back a little bit,
Yeah,
dude, a huge part of masculinity, right? Rejection.
Yeah.
Like that whole idea of being able to like put yourself up there, going up to that girl that you find attractive and like, hey, you know, I think you're cute. Like, my name's Jordan. What's your name?
Yeah.
Right. I was talking to one of my friends, and she was complaining, you know, she was like, no guy ever comes up to me, right? Like, no, like, you know, and she's a very attractive girl. Like, I will admit it. And it's like, that's such a shame, you know? Like, I think it's just this culture of we're so afraid to express vulnerability in that sense. And we're so afraid to be rejected that we don't engage in action at all.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah.
Or you're like protecting your ego from the littlest blow.
The tiniest blows.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that for everything, right? You know, you can go into business. If you want to run something, you have to be able to be rejected, right? Things aren't going to go perfectly. It's just this idea of expressing vulnerability in any sense, in everything. Going up to that girl is being vulnerable, you know, going up to, you know, a friend and saying like how you really feel and not hiding that in, that's being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to tie that back into masculinity, I think, dude, masculinity is being vulnerable, you know, being able to express your needs, express your boundaries, express what you want and have at this time. And, you know, I think a lot of us don't, or we never learned how to. And when I say a lot of us, I'm talking about me. So maybe that expresses that to someone else, maybe not. But it's just, it's an ongoing path for sure.
Yeah. Like, I think most people have such a interesting relationship with themselves. And then you add another person, and you're trying to manage your own relationship with yourself and this person.
Yeah.
It gets complicated.
It does.
And the things that you think is normal, the other person doesn't think it's normal. And you're trying to figure out like, where do we meet? How do we set up these boundaries? How does all this work?
Right.
And it's a crazy game. And I don't even like the word game because it shouldn't be.
No.
But it's a crazy game.
It's like a dance, man.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the best like word I've ever heard to describe relationships. But it's also just, it's a mirror, man. When you're in this like relationship, especially long-term relationships, and you're seeing how like every little thing that you do affects this other person, and vice versa, that they're seeing how everything that they do affects you. It's like, I don't think there's a better way to grow, but just to see where you are as a person than to be in a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely shows you things that you couldn't see when you're single.
No, completely. What do you think of have you ever heard of like there's those like men groups online. There's like MGTOW, if you've MGTOW? Okay, yeah, like men going their own way.
Yeah.
There's there's the red pill, obviously. There's all these little groups that have been emerging, especially the Manosphere. Yeah, okay. In like the last, 10 years.
Yeah.
And everything. And did you ever find yourself getting kind of sucked into that? Or
I think some of the content can be provocative for guys.
Yeah.
Like you see all those like YouTube clips, like I don't know, when he stops simping or something. It's just like guys like rejecting girls or something. All those sensationalized clips. I think at times you can like you can relate to that, or like all those the shorts of Fresh and Fit or something like that. Like you see like all these like. I think for one, I think the girls that usually take on those podcasts don't represent most girls.
Yes.
They definitely represent like a subset.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're all like in Miami. Like, so you're taking girls from Miami.
Yes.
It's probably not the best representation of all women.
Yeah.
And then you're having like, I'm not a huge fan of that sort of stuff.
Of course.
When I was younger, sure, I like watched a bunch of it, but it never really stuck around because I don't think that's like the proper way to go about relationship stuff.
No.
Their advice isn't always the best.
No. Yeah. Not at all. Not at all. And it's I really think that the worst part about that is it really promotes this divide, right? And it starts becoming like men versus women.
Yeah.
And like me and Alex talked about this a little bit, but it's something you see all the time. And maybe like, for example, I'm a big have a big dislike for TikTok.
Sure.
Right? I post content and I've been trying to do that for a bit. And I was doing that on TikTok as well. I saw more success on TikTok than I did Instagram.
Sure.
But anytime I find that I have the TikTok app and I go on it, I see stories of like guys saying like, like girls aren't shit, like men go your own way, you don't need a girl. And then I'll swipe again and it's like, girls saying like men ain't shit. And just going back through these, it promotes this divide. And there's podcasts like that, Fresh and Fit, just promote it even worse. Yeah. And I think it's really, it doesn't make sense,
No. Right, like what is it? A kingdom divided against itself can't stand.
Yeah, exactly.
This maybe nowadays might be a hot take, but like men and women are different.
Yeah, of course.
But different in a way that like usually complements each other.
Right.
And I think ultimately like it's a good thing to be in if you're straight, like a relationship with a woman or a relationship with a man like that. Mm-hmm. I think there's the ways where it complements each other and makes you a better person. Yeah. I guess my piece of advice would be like, don't get into a relationship unless it's like gonna benefit you. Right. Not in like a selfish way, but like
of course.
The person you're with doesn't complement your life. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
If you're looking for cheap thrills, sure.
Right.
But I think if you're looking like longer term, like, stay single until you find someone who comes alongside and complements your life. Yeah. Who helps like get you on your purpose, your goals, your mission, all that sort of stuff.
They have to add something to your life the same way that you likewise add something to their life, right? Exactly. Like, I love that term, like, we're different, like we're equal but different, or different but equal, right? It's like, we're very different, right? If you talk to like, like a very feminine woman, you'll realize like, holy, like this is completely like, this is so interesting, right? And then in the same way, it's just, there's such a big compliment to, it just complements your life so much. Like I might be the first one to say, but like I want that in my life, right? Like I really need that in my life, and hopefully it's the same way. And I was going somewhere with this, forget where that was. Yeah, blanked. Yeah. But it's a shame. I think that also plays a role in why boys are struggling, having such a hard time becoming a man nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
What are like 3 green flags you look for in a relationship?
I've been thinking about that a lot recently. It's actually probably like a page in my journal about that. And I think you asked me like maybe a year and a half ago, I probably would have started listing off like physical characteristics and everything. But now I think I'm started realizing like all of critical thinking, right? And when I say relationship, like what I want in my partner is kind of something I want in my friends as well. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's some characters in the partner that I wouldn't want in my friends, right? But things like critical thinking, be able to like being shown like a piece of information and be able to discern like this isn't true because it's in a headline. Like what is to gain, the sense of critical thinking. Yeah. I think the just love, right? Being a loving person. I'm gonna put that for 2 and 3. Okay. It's just seeing people who are just caring and like loving in the sense that the only thing they want to give is love, right? They are in sense love, if that makes sense. It's a hard thing to explain, but it's more of like a subconscious thing that you can kind of just pick up on. It's something that can't be faked,
No, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. What do you think of like the whole like PUA culture, like pickup artistry and all of that?
I mean, again, I think if you're like around the MGTOW manosphere,
which falls into there,
you get some of those videos popping on your feed. I think there's a good aspect to some of that stuff, like being able to be confident, being able to take rejection, being able to have like social cues, like. It's really embarrassing sometimes. I was at a restaurant Tuesday, and I'm sitting there like eating my meal, and this guy like a couple tables over is trying to pick up the waitress, and you can just tell like his friends are not into it, she's not into it, he just cannot read the room. Yeah. And I think having like emotional intelligence, being able to read the room, be like, this is not the right time. Like she's working. Yeah. I understand like I appreciate you like shooting your shot. But
yeah, she's getting paid to talk to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Realistically, it's getting her a bigger tip. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
So I think there are some benefits, and I mean I think everyone's heard those headlines like those guys have to like to get into the group they have to pick up or get like 100 girls' numbers in a day or something.
Right.
I think that like
whoa.
destroy. You never heard that?
No, I've never heard that.
Okay.
To get into the group, like what?
It's like some pickup artist group, like the first like these boot camps. Like you'll go away to wherever, like Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Like your first day's challenge is you have to ask 100 girls for their numbers.
Yeah.
And what's your success ratio going to be? Like probably pretty low, but I think that like
Yeah.
kind of destroys you, so you can be built up and you have that confidence.
Right.
I was talking to a friend the other day and kind of saying like, if you get good at dating, you're going to get good at dating.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily help you with a longer term relationship or like a marriage or like
right.
going further than that.
Right.
So I think to some degree having those tools is important, but I wouldn't put like all my stock in that for sure.
Yeah. No, completely. Have you ever heard of Mark Manson by chance? He wrote this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving Not Giving a Fuck. Yeah. And then I love his books. And he has this other one like Everything is Fucked. Okay. But he was a big proponent of like the PUA thing. He was he's very open about it. You know, he's talks about how he slept with like hundreds of women. He really fell down that space of like his first relationship he got cheated on, and then he fell down into the Manosphere for a little bit, and then his retaliation was just, you know, being with as many women as possible as a sense of like ego validation. And what he wrote a whole book on this called Models, which I recommend to almost like anyone who's really struggling with that type of sense. But he talked about everything that you were saying about vulnerability and being able to have those skills, those social skills to know when like, hey, you know, she's not into you, back off. Or just being able to like, and also contrary to that, just being able to like shoot your shot for the first time, like express vulnerability. It's important. But
no, absolutely.
Do you know anything about attachment styles? Did you ever?
Like a confused attachment style or like codependent or?
Like anxious, avoidance.
Not super familiar. Like I've heard some of the terms. But...
Okay. Well, that's something I've been really trying to look into a bit, and I think, you know, I'm like putting myself back like 2 years ago, right? When I was like really into the whole Manosphere space and the whole rebel space. And it's weird talking about this because I'm 21, right? And you can go online and there's like guys who are 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 who are still, you know, in that same sphere. So it's weird for me to say like, yeah, you know, 2 years ago I was really struggling with that when 2 years ago I was 19, you know, but I think that's such a benefit with the internet and everything we can learn now. But when I was, you know, trying to learn these like pickup artistry tactics and, you know, how to be more attractive to women, and, you know, like obviously I started going to the gym and everything and like picking up like mannerisms on, you know, just how to be more attractive on text messages, how to have more game, how to do that. I found kind of what you were saying before is that I was getting really good at picking up women. I was getting really, I hate that. That's disgusting. I was getting really good at casual relationships, right? With people that I would not want to have been in a long-term relationship with, right? Because I find that how you approach those situations are so much different than how you'd approach a healthy relationship, right? Because someone who is, you know, for me, I like women. I'll be very open about that. So, you know, a girl who's very healthy and secure in her own way won't respond to the games that you play when you're trying to use tactics and games and all of that sense. And that was something I had to learn. But, you know,
that makes a lot of sense. Like, you're not typically going to find like a long-term partner on Tinder or at a club or downtown. Typically, there are exceptions, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I have a friend of mine, her and her now fiance met on Tinder.
Oh wow!
Like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy, but I think like where you look as well has an impact on the person.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So what were you?
No, I was gonna say you're a little older
Sure.
than me. You know, you're 24. Are there any things that you've learned in the last 3 years? Because that have helped you in like, is there anything really anything that's really stood out for you?
Generally?
And just in general, in terms of relationships or in terms of, you know, just growth in itself. Yeah,
that's so funny. I was just thinking like that same question. I was like, I wonder how I can like, we can talk about like the differences in how much you change as a person. Like 20 to 24, vastly different for myself.
Yeah.
And I expect that's going to be the case for a lot of guys.
Of course.
Especially guys that are doing a little bit more with life. They're trying to propel themselves further.
Yeah.
What are some things I learned?
It's a hard question.
It is.
On the spot, yeah.
It is. I think both relationships and generally, one big takeaway I had is it's okay to ask for help. Like from your friends. Like, I know this is like it's not even a point of contention.
Yeah.
But like it's okay to go to therapy. That's okay to do as a guy.
Right.
Like life is challenging, and our lives are exceedingly more challenging than they were like 100 years ago in some different ways.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily built for the environment we live now, and it's okay to reach out to someone who can actually support you and help you through life.
Yeah.
I wrote it down one time, and I'm not sure if it still exists, but I had like a bit of a plan. Like, if I was going to take a 15-year-old kid and get him to like a 20-year-old, what would I do? And I remember one of those things, like a summer of hardships. This isn't something I've done, but I would like, if you're 18 or 19, like look into tree planting for the summer.
Yeah.
Like go plant trees, work your butt off, make 30 grand.
Yeah.
And come back. Like that will put some hair on your chest. That will give you some character.
Right.
I think finding an opportunity to work really hard at something, that's something I've learned is important, going from 21 to 24.
Yeah.
Delayed gratification. I think
Huge.
everyone talks about that. Like,
huge.
Put away Instagram Reels, pick up a book. Like,
yeah.
Reading 10 books this year is going to be a lot more beneficial than the 10 hours of Reels you're going to be on, right?
Yeah. It's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard at the start.
It is.
It's horrible.
No. Yeah, I have like an app that like I can individually block websites, and there's like times when I'm dialed in, I'm like blocking Instagram, I'm blocking YouTube, Facebook, everything. Yeah. It's like my computer's used for work, like it was intended.
Like it was intended.
I know none of them struggle with that, but for me, I struggle with that.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, what do you, going back a little bit, you said that we're not necessarily built for the environment that we live in. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that thought is something I've thought of kind of independently for a while, but I was in class, we're talking about like change theories and different psychological approaches to being a practitioner. And
in the CYC class?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay.
It's CYC, as a side note, is kind of a weird program. Like you're not in psychology, you're also not a social worker. You're kind of like somewhere in the middle.
Just doing a bit of everything. Okay.
Yeah. And our teacher was explaining like the rates of ADHD are just skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And it's our bodies, in her opinion, it's our body's reaction to too much stimulus.
Right.
Like you have your phone in your pocket with unlimited information.
Yeah.
When are you ever bored if you have your phone?
Right.
You got music playing, you're reading an article, you have Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok. You come home, you turn on Netflix, you're playing a video game. Like there's too much stimulus for our bodies to handle.
Yeah. And
that kind of turns our brain into ADHD mode.
Right.
We go from thing to thing to thing to thing, and it's not the healthiest thing for us.
Yeah.
That was the kind of the thought behind the statement. We're not really designed for the environment we're in.
No, I love that. I mean, I completely agree. Have you ever heard of DDS?
DDS.
Dopamine dysregulation syndrome?
No.
Well, I went down this little like rabbit hole maybe a month ago, looking into ADHD and everything, and I stumbled upon this book. It was called the Hunter Farmer Hypothesis.
Okay.
But not to go too much into that, there's this syndrome called DDS, which is basically by giving our brains too much stimuli from, there's things like video games, high stimulation activity, pornography, TikTok, short form content, all these things. We're basically wearing out I was going to say basal ganglia. It's definitely not that. But there's the part of our brain that secretes dopamine.
Sure.
Essentially like a button. Every time we watch these videos, it secretes a little dopamine, and we watch again and again. And what happens is that we get DDS by essentially repeating that activity, and that button just gets worn out. And eventually that button isn't able to secrete any more dopamine. And this syndrome is usually taken for ADHD. If you go try and get tested for ADHD, what they make you do, they make you sign out a form, get references from the people around you. Like, do you have trouble focusing? Yes. Can you pay attention for an hour at a time? No. Right. Okay. You have ADHD. Here's your Vyvanse prescription. Right. But in a sense, you could have DDS, where basically your dopamine receptors ran out from constantly giving it too much stimuli. And I just thought that was interesting, because there's all these articles that say ADHD is increasing over time, when the scientific literature says that ADHD has been constant, but DDS has been rising over time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that might be the real problem.
Well, yeah.
It is the real problem.
Yeah, because it's from all the dopamine, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was interesting. Just a little tidbit I wanted to toss in. Make use of the education that I'm getting in school.
And you can see that. It's not even like the like technology we're using, even the food. Like,
yeah.
Like you're sitting watching Netflix, like eating a bag of sour keys. Like,
yeah.
I got a headache after that. Like 15 sour keys in. I'm like, holy, something needs to stop. I need to go for a walk or something.
Yeah. Like, do you find like actual headache, or do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really.
This is a real lived experience. We had a party and there's a bunch of leftover candy. I was like sitting like watching a show and I was like, I actually have a headache after this.
Really?
This is crazy.
That's no, because I feel the same thing. If I catch myself, just like watching Netflix, eating a bag of chips while doing this and that, I feel it's not a headache, but I can feel myself overstimulated.
Yeah.
And then I need to go on like a walk for 25-30 minutes, like restore my baseline level, like dopamine,
Yeah.
It's interesting, man.
It is.
I remember in first year university, and before I started to practice delayed gratification.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your experience was with this first, if there was like a level to this for you. But for me, it was like I was always plugged in. Woke up, go onto the phone, scroll for a little bit, then get out of bed, plug in some music, listen to music. Then I'll go, while listening to music, hop on the computer for a little bit, then go downstairs, eat some food while watching a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Then, maybe go upstairs, listen to music, plug into the console or something, play some video games, hit the gym while listening to music, go take a shower, play some music. I was just always plugged in, and I could never like stop myself and like pull away, because it was just really hard to delay that like instantaneous gratification I got from doing those activities. Were you going through like something similar when you tried to start practicing, these delayed practices and everything? Like, what'd your life look like before and after?
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. Like at different stages of my life, and I think it goes ups and downs.
Oh, of
course. There's times where it's like I can't be in the kitchen if I'm not like I'm cooking and I don't have music. Like I need music. Of
course.
And there's other times where I'm like I'm content just to sit in the park and like listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
There's different base levels, but yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think the short form content is what really gets me quite often.
Right.
It's so easy just to pull out your phone and then. End of the day, you're like, oh, I have 6 hours of screen time. Like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
I wasn't even in school that long. Like, how did I fit all this time in?
No, exactly.
And you're totally right. Like, there's so many different ways we get, like, bombarded. Mm-hmm. Music, content, foods. I think a big one that you mentioned, too, is, like, pornography. Like, that's a huge one. I think a little bit, like, more centralized my context, there's a huge, like, guilt and shame aspect, like, in a Christian circle to talk about pornography.
Definitely.
But, I mean, man, like, you look at the statistics, I think in the last week, or in a typical week, like 85%, 90% of guys, like, watch pornography at least once.
Yeah.
Like, that's not good for your brain.
No, it's not.
You scroll through any pornographic site for, like, a little bit of time. You've seen more attractive women than, like, you or my grandpa ever saw.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not great for your brain long term, for sure. Like I'll rephrase that. It's not good for your brain long term. Yeah. Right.
It's not at all. Right.
Not at all.
Yeah. There's stats like that. You can see more naked women now than the king could. Yeah. If back in like like a century ago or whatever.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it definitely hijacks your brain.
Completely.
And that's a huge one. Like from what I've heard and what I've looked at, it is harder to beat like a pornography addiction than it is to beat like a cocaine addiction. Yeah. And the brain scans look very similar between the two of them. Right. Which is crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's horrible that there's that guilt and shame.
Yeah. Like
applied to it, because then people just don't talk about it.
Yeah, you're not gonna reach out and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like, yeah. I think the only time that happens is November with like No Nut November. That's where it gets a little bit more talked about.
Right. But then I find that it's talked about in a weird way.
In a joking way almost.
It's in a joking way, right? It's like, okay, boys are practicing No Nut November. I'm gonna be I'm meditating. I'm gonna be levitating by like day 20. Right. I'm gonna be floating. Yeah, exactly. And I think when you talk about it in that sense, it talks about like this act of like, I want to say abstaining. It's not abstaining, just not watching pornography and everything is not normal, and watching it is. I think that's kind of what it's promoted nowadays, at least in my personal opinion. Yeah. I have the view that it's so harmful. Yeah. Right. And like a hypersexualized society is not a society that you want to be in.
No, it's not a healthy one for sure.
No, completely.
I think the average or median age for exposure is 9 years old. Which
What?
That is ridiculous.
Dude, where'd you hear that?
This is also like not like I wouldn't say pornography is a passion of mine, but like yeah. It's not. But I really like to look at addiction as well.
Right.
And that's such a big one I see. Like you're talking to these teenage guys and they're like telling you like what a problem in their life is, and pornography comes up 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Right. I'm at a table, me and like a co-leader at a table with like 10 guys.
Wow. Yeah.
9 of them have a problem. Wow. They're like, if they were 100% honest, they're like, I cannot stop.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to, but I can't.
Dude, that's actually awesome that they're able to share that with you, because that's difficult, man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. It's and like that stat, like 9 years old, it's crazy. I don't know. I can't find a source.
No, but that's okay. Like, are you seeing kids like that? Like some of the kids in your group, like who are like 14, 15?
Yeah, I think most of the kids I'm interacting with, most of the boys I'm interacting with, have brushed into it at the very least, or have some sort of like struggle with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awful, man.
And then again, like, I think people think like a religious context gives you like a buffer. Yeah. And that's not the case, right?
A buffer.
Like, hopefully in a religious context, you're protected from that stuff, but that's not the case. Like, yeah. This is going to happen to any kid, whether you go to youth group or church or whether you don't. Yeah. Like, the amount of access is crazy.
Yeah. Right? It's horrible. And, we're talking about kids, but there are guys, 20, 30, there are guys in long-term marriages who are addicted to porn. Yeah. Right, like there's so many statistics and like studies that you can find that there's guys in their 60s, who are stuck, like just watching this stuff, and you see all of these I'm trying how to frame this, but you see these assaults that happen nowadays, and you see all of these hate crimes towards women, everything, and guys watching videos of how can I say this?
Harmful content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I find that especially if you're in that space watching a lot of that type of content, you're not having a lot of meaningful interactions with women in, the real world, away from the phone. So if your only experience with girls is through the phone and through what you're watching, and it's really, really harmful.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna mess you up in the real world for sure.
Yeah,
you're gonna have all this like programming of like what a healthy sexual relationship looks like, but they're not healthy sexual relationships.
They're not, completely.
It's all fake.
It's all fake. Yeah.
It's all fake. It's not normal. It's like not. Yeah, and then you get into like extreme or like violent content, and like that is. Yeah, it's not normal. Yeah.
But then that plays a role in the dopamine regulation as well, because you can. At the start, all that stuff is so stimulating, right? Yeah. Just like watching two people, I'm gonna say fornicate, just because that seems a little cleaner. Yeah, right. Just it's like, whoa, what the heck? Yeah. And then eventually that's that kind of dies down, and then if you just keep watching, you're always on it. You need something more. You need something more. Then all of a sudden you're watching some obscure, dark stuff, and I'm very grateful that I'm not speaking from experience. Like, thank God. Yeah. But you keep seeing all these instances online of this happening, and I just can't even imagine what that does to your brain.
It's not good. Not good.
It's not good.
From what I understand, like from the time you stop, it's about a 2 to 5 year process to like heal your brain fully.
Really?
So it is possible.
Yeah.
That means abstinence from pornography for 2 to 5 years.
Right.
Which is a pretty good time.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like, a month is pretty hard for the average guy, or impossible. You're asking someone to
30
stop.
days.
Yeah.
Guys, I failed on day 3.
Gotta restart the count.
Yeah. How do you go about helping like some of the kids who open up to you about that?
Yeah. I think the biggest part, like you kind of talked about, was just admitting that it is a problem.
Yeah.
And then having like some sort of check-in. Like, I like to use technology to my advantage, and on like iPhones you can automate text messages that get sent out.
Oh, no way.
So there's like a couple of us leaders in a group chat with a bunch of the guys, and it's just an automated text message. 9 p.m. Hey guys, how you doing? Like what? And there's a bunch of questions like, how you guys doing? What, have you fallen into this or not? And, just like having an open dialogue is a great place to start.
Right.
I think the biggest part is community as well. Like for any addiction.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think you can fight addiction by yourself. You can't fight it well by yourself.
Yeah.
The other thing too is like, what is your why?
Right.
I think Viktor Frankl in
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. He talks about like you need your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Your purpose can take you through so many different things.
Yeah.
And if there's not a purpose to stop any sort of compulsive behavior, good luck.
Right.
Like, you want to stop smoking. Like, okay, why are you going to stop smoking?
Yeah.
What is the why behind that?
Right.
So I think that's something that each person has to figure out for whatever vice they have. Because let's be honest, like for a young guy, it might be pornography, it might be drinking, it might be weed, whatever it is. Like,
we all have vices, right? We all succumb to something.
Yeah, we're not going to sit here and like pretend we're perfect, sinless people. Like that's not the case in the slightest.
Exactly.
But finding a why to stop, I think, is crucial.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love the fact that you guys are like playing such a big role in helping the kids stop that too, because that's like just the idea of community, I think is so important, and that's amazing that people are finding that, you know, through the church and through you guys.
Sure. Yeah, that's another huge topic, is like, where do people find community nowadays?
Yeah.
Like 50 years ago, there's actually community centers where you guys would get together on the weekend, have a barbecue, like you knew your neighbors. Like, it doesn't happen very often.
Right.
I've lived in the same place for like 10 years. Like I know my neighbors. We've never been over to their houses for dinner, like, or had a barbecue or anything like that. Like, I think it's really hard to build a strong community of people you can rely on.
It is.
Because you can't, like we talked about earlier on, you can't be a lone wolf always.
You can't.
There's moments or seasons you can be, but you really need a tribe to help you in life.
You have to.
And like, it's too hard to go by yourself.
Dude, completely. And those seasons are only there to help you eventually when you get into the tribe, right? And that's the idea that I love. It's just, you're in this period of focus just because you want to be a better person for when you're surrounded by people.
Exactly.
Right. I love this idea of, as a person, I was going to say as a guy, but just as a person in general, you need a third home. And that's something that we had, back, 50 years ago now, is that we have our homes, we have work, or for us, school and work, and that's it, right? When 50 years ago, people had, they had home, they had work, and then they had the church, or they had home, they had the work, they had the pub, they had home, they had work, they had the farmer's market, the place they volunteered, the place they did that. And I think there's a lot of people, and I struggled with this too, is that you don't have that third home, you don't have that community to really build.
And community is so important. Like, I'm just thinking about my experience, like in the church. Like I know doctors, I know lawyers, I know accountants, I know guys have owned like investment funds. Like, and it's so amazing being like, hey, like, can I pick your brain about finances? Like, I don't know what to do with my money. Do you mind if I like come over and we chat about this? Or like, I think that's so cool, having people, especially professionals, you can like ask, like, how do I go through life?
Right.
And it's not, we not like cold calling an engineering firm or like a doctor's office. Like, you have some reciprocal relationship with this person because they're in your community. Whether it's a church or a pub or a gym or a rec center. I think that's so key.
No, completely. And you see that in like small towns all the time, right? Like my dad's parents live in this like small town called Hannah in Alberta, and they know, you want meat, the butcher. You want vegetables, you want, home fresh grown squash in the winter, who to go. And it's the exact same thing. If you have someone you want to talk to, who to. Where I feel like now, sometimes we don't know who to if we don't have that community.
It's hard. Like I love connecting people together. I get like a joy out of it. Like, oh, you're having a problem? Okay, you know what? I know this guy who does this thing. Let me get him to talk to you. I think it just makes more sense too to support your people. Like, there's like plumbers or electricians that go to the church. Like, I'd rather support you,
right?
Because I know you, and like I know your character. Like, I'm pretty sure you're not gonna be out like doing coke like downtown this weekend because you have a wife and kids. Like, I'd rather support people I know than just some random guy. That's
amazing. And I don't know, I'm really grateful that I found Gateway. I'm a little bad with the services, but it's really amazing church, and what you guys are doing is like a really powerful thing. And
thank you.
Of course. And just especially there's some things I didn't know about what was happening in the background that with the kids and the youth groups and everything that you're help running. I think that's amazing. Like, genuinely.
Like we've said a couple times, like life is too hard to go at it alone. You need support from people. For sure.
No, of course. And just one last topic I want to before we wrap this up. Just going back, and you can argue, I guess, this whole conversation is kind of self-improvement, but I'm really curious about just your journey, and we talked about it from the religious sense, but just with religion, but how was that for you? Like, What do you think were some of the hardest tribulations that you found, especially going from like that 18 to that 18 to your earlier 20s, because you started school a bit later, right? You took a few years.
Yeah, I went to college right out of high school, but that was like I was working and going to college part time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit funny being my third year and being 24, but it's been a long journey with breaks in between for sure.
Yeah, of course. And I'm just, because I saw your Instagram, you just look like a completely different person.
Yeah.
Back when to who you are now, just all clean kept, the wash, like the proper haircut. Just it's quite something. So I'm really interested to hear just a little bit more about that, if you don't mind sharing.
That journey, like
just that journey for you. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so many aspects of that. I think the first thing that like got a hold of me that really interested me was the concept of money. So I think in a lot of ways, like money is freedom.
Money is freedom. Yeah.
You can at least buy things that make you happy for a moment. Like what's it's a stupid quote, but like you've never seen a sad person on a jet ski.
Yeah. Might be sad when they come off.
Maybe when they come off.
Yeah.
Not when you're on it.
Yeah.
And that was something that I got like obsessed with, like right out of high school, probably till 18, 19. Like I was reading every business book I can. Like
really, okay.
Like Tim Ferriss, or like Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Love that.
The Wealthy Barber, like all these.
I have all those books in my bookshelf. Okay. Yeah, that's sick. Yeah.
So like reading all that sort of stuff and just trying to figure out like, how do I get rich?
Right.
And like if you're not gonna go into business or like on your own entrepreneurship, like realistically, like save more than you spend.
Yeah.
And that's like an easy way. So I kind of like started looking at the money stuff, and then from there it was just like, how do I become a better person?
Right.
Like, leadership books, like I'm sure you know Jocko Willink. Yeah. So like reading his books and listening to his podcasts like religiously, and then morphing more just like general self-help, like Jordan Peterson, like reading his 2 books. I got to see him this year, which was really cool.
No way.
Yeah.
When he came to Vancouver? Or?
He was here in Victoria.
Yes, yes, I actually knew that. I wanted to go to that, but I missed it. Yeah, how was it?
It was okay. It felt like the first, it felt like the first 1/4 was like an ad for like a bunch of other things he's doing.
Oh, okay.
But there was a Q&A point at the end where he answered 4 or 5 questions from audience members, and that was amazing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so like figuring out like money, then general self-improvement, fitness. High school, I was a fat kid.
Yeah, wow,
I was 13 years old and like 175 pounds. I was chunky.
That's how tall were you?
Like 5'7", 5'8".
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously grown a little bit taller, put on some more weight, but it's like it's not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Recomps.
Yeah.
The recomp. Yeah.
And that is probably the gym has been such an influential part of my life at different points in my life.
Right.
I never had a lot of friends in high school, but me and my one buddy would go to the gym after school for the longest time.
Yeah.
Then he transferred out of our high school, and then I was like, just go in the gym, go home. I'd eat my chicken salad every single day and just watch as many bodybuilding videos as I could.
Yeah.
You're watching like everything I could,
every
exercise, and just like so focused on lifting.
Yeah.
That kind of transitioned into powerlifting. I was like, I like getting big, but I also like I'm moving a decent weight. So like, let's try to put some more weight on the bar.
Okay.
So it feels like a lifetime ago now, but I competed in 2017. Like
no way. Okay.
Like the summer I graduated, or the summer after I graduated, or something like that. And then from there, like I was just powerlifting, and then I hurt my knee like a couple months before COVID hit.
Right.
And I was like, well, okay, we're taking a break. So home workouts, I called them prison workouts. Pull-ups, push-ups, squats.
Right.
So I've done like calisthenics a little bit.
Okay.
Man, I actually liked calisthenics because I could actually move well.
Right.
When you're a powerlifter, like I'm 200 pounds right now.
Oh, it's so rigid.
Yeah. I'm like 15 minutes on the Stairmasters. Death for me.
Right.
When you're doing calisthenics and you're running, you're like skipping, like I actually feel healthy. I don't feel super healthy powerlifting. You gotta boost the ego somehow.
Of course.
Yeah, and then like this September is the first time I've been in the gym since COVID.
No way. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just getting back into it, trying to figure out how to get strong again.
Yeah.
And the goal is to powerlift again in the future.
Right.
Try to get my lifts up a little bit before that, and maybe have to drop some weight because my body weight to lift ratio isn't great right now. But
okay. Yeah, that's really funny. I remember the first time I met you. This the big guy, shades, head, the tucked in tight shirts, and like the 5-inch seams. I'm like, oh, dude, this guy rolls. There's no way. That's why I asked you. I was like, yo, do you do? Yeah. You're like, no, or no, like you tried it a couple times, right?
Yeah,
like you mentioned.
He transitioned his basement to like a gym. It was pretty ghetto.
Yeah. No, that's sick. But yeah, and that was my first thought. So that's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. How how'd you find like what do you know what got you into like reading it for the first part? Because you said it was money, but was there something that made you just interested in like learning more, or do you find that you were just always interested in learning, especially from like an early age?
Yeah. I don't know if I can say for certain.
Yeah.
I've always had like a bit of a hunger in me.
Okay.
I have to like keep this in check, but there's always, not always, there's often times where I'm not like satisfied with just life.
Yeah.
If I'll get like a 90 on a paper, I'll be like, where's the other 10%?
Right.
So there's a hunger for improvement.
Yeah.
And I think I've had that basically through my whole life.
Right.
As you get older, you get a little bit more autonomy. You can like self-actualize a little bit more.
Yeah.
You can go to the gym and express that in some other ways. Maybe
right.
are a little bit healthier.
Yeah. That's a great term. Self-actualize.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Dude, that's wicked. Yeah. I love that. Just, hearing everything that you've been to, especially the books you're reading. Just reminds me of, what I went through, and I love that. Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, dude, we can start to wrap up. Is there any last things that you'd like to say, love to mention?
I'll probably be driving home and be like, oh, I should have said this. But
as it goes.
Yeah, as it goes. No, I mean, like, I think if I'm just going to like kind of tie it back to what we started with, like, religion. For the people listening, like, if you are questioning wherever you are, like, do some exploring. Yeah. Like, wherever you feel called to start off with, like, do that. Maybe it's at a church, maybe it's at a mosque, maybe you're like just reading Eastern religion at home, like whatever it is. Yeah. I think you need to find, I don't think you need to, but I think if you are searching, my suggestion would be start looking. Right. And maybe that means like just showing up to a church and like having no clue what the heck is going on. Just like trying it for a week or two. Right. And my suggestion with a lot of things would be like, don't just show up to something once. Yeah. Like if you're starting jiu-jitsu, don't show up one time and be like, nope, I'm done.
It's not for me.
Show up 3 times. That's my ask. 3 times, give it a shot. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Yeah, I would argue more than 3 times. More than 3 times. Yeah, show for a month. Go for 2. If you can hold yourself for 2 months, and I don't know, I just hate the idea of showing up once and it's like, oh, jiu-jitsu sucks. Like, it's not for me. Yeah. Right. Maybe the instructor's having an off day. Maybe you're having an off day. Yeah. Maybe who knows what it is. Yeah. But yeah, put some effort into it. Yeah. Try to figure it out. Whatever it is for you. Yeah. And then one last question. What do you do you have any advice for people who want to get into religion? They're curious about it, but they don't know where to start, or they don't know what to look for, right? They hear you say like, yeah, maybe go to a mosque or go to pick up a book on Eastern philosophy, but none of that like pulls them towards it, right? Do you have any advice for someone who's just, they want to start, but they don't know where to go? I think I'll tie it into the topic we've talked about a lot, like community. Like find a church. If you're here in the city, like come to Gateway Church. Come to Gateway Church. I'd love to meet you. Like, I don't know how you, if you want to take my Instagram or something, I'll be kind of whatever it is, like reach out to someone who goes to a church, like go check it out with them. Yeah. I think again, if you're trying to figure out like Christianity, like start with the gospel, like try to read it, and maybe it's hard to do it, like try to dismantle that box. Right. Like, I'm sure we've all heard the story of like Jesus' crucifixion. Like try to look at that with like new eyes, or like the story of like feeding the 5,000, like turning one fish and like a loaf of bread into, or 5 fish and 5 loaves to like feeding 5,000 people. Like that's crazy. Right. Maybe try looking at that with an open lens. I honestly I can't give you like a step-by-step guide to what that looks like. I think part of looking into religion is being open to experiences that you don't necessarily understand. Yeah. I can't give you explanation on how I felt pulled to go talk to Storm. Right. But I can tell you, if someone asks like, why are you a Christian today? That is one of the key moments I knew that God was real. Yeah. Because I wasn't moving, I wasn't being pushed, I was being pulled by something bigger than myself. Right. That was spot on, man. Okay. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, well, dude, thank you again for doing that. I appreciate I appreciate the podcast. Thanks for the opportunity.